Hi creative friends, this is Soraya and thank you so much for being here. So I'm just going to dive right into this luscious, delicious portrait and excuse me, I have some tea over here. It is hibiscus, clove, and honey because I have a little bit of allergies in my throat, and normally I don't like to drink tea while I'm painting because inevitably I start dipping my paintbrush into my tea. So I'm sure that has happened to you guys as well. So I don't make a habit of it, but my throat is just feeling a little scratchy. So I'm just gonna put it off to the side and hopefully I don't spill it or dip my paintbrush in it or anything like that. But let's just dive right in. So I'm gonna bring this up closer. I've allowed everything to completely dry, and as you can see, there's a lot of delicious, luscious paint quality and texture, and I really don't have a lot of layers. Like, I initially put down the splash of yellow paint, which was quite watered down, and then I got out my Stabilo, I did my drawing, and I put some collage, some tea bags, and you know, a little bit of my Liquitex ink. I did the whites of the eyes and I did the dress. So I want to say, like, I only have about maybe at the most 3 layers, but already it's taking on so much depth and dimension. So I'm just going to continue building it up. Now, like I mentioned, I am going to be working in reverse, and this is not difficult, but it's kind of like you're driving an automatic car and you have to switch gears. And if you don't know how to drive, I'm sorry, not an automatic car, but a manual car, because I drive an automatic. But just say you were driving a manual car and you had to switch gears and you're just learning, like it just takes a minute to kind of like, oh my God, like I gotta switch gears. That's all, you know, it is. So it's not a difficult process, but it's just a bit like it muddles up my brain a little bit. But basically, I am going to add the push parts, and I'm going to use the yellow for my pull parts of the face. So while I work, I'm just going to recap like some of the things I've been saying, and I'm not repeating it just for like, I'm not trying to be redundant, but there is a reason why I am repeating the points over and over again. It's because a lot of people, myself included, I learn by repetition. Like, so say example, when I learned that, you know, just say you have black hair. Well, there's a ton of other colors and tones and textures in that black hair. It's not a solid field of black hair. Well, when I first learned that, it took me a while to really kind of get it. Because, you know, when you're painting, you're using a part of your brain that, well, for me anyways, it's kind of like on auto. And so even though I might know it, you know, the teacher, you know, I took a class and the teacher's telling it to me. So I understand it with my logical brain. But then when I start painting, that part of my brain just kind of, I don't know if it shuts down, but it certainly kind of, you know, it becomes secondary and another part of my brain takes over. So I kind of forget, I've kind of used to forget what I learned when I was just not painting and just listening to the teacher. I hope I'm making sense. So I had to learn by repetition and, you know, just the repeating and repeating and repeating. So while I work, I'm just going to repeat the points. They're very important. And these 3 points alone just elevated my art to a different level. So the first point is the push and pull. This is such a great visual and you can use it for absolutely anything, whether it's still lifes or landscapes or portraits or, you know, art journaling, whatever you're painting. It's like anything that you want to push into the background, you are going to generally use cooler and neutralized tones and colors. And anything you want to pull forward, you are going to use warmer colors and, you know, more brighter colors. So that push and pull, it's just a very good visual. And now I know it, like, it's become a part of my painting process, but in the beginning I used to like write it, push and pull, and just kind of stick it above my desk. And you know, it's just a good anchoring point. The second point is that everything in your painting works in tandem with everything else. Like nothing stands alone, absolutely nothing. No color, no line, no color field, no nothing, no texture, whatever. Everything works together in harmony. And even when you're breaking the rules, like there are artists who, you know, they totally broke the rules. That's what we know them for. I mean, we don't know an artist because they generally followed the rules. I mean, some artists we do, like especially during the Renaissance, you know, they actually followed all the rules, like say Da Vinci and you know, Michelangelo, etc., etc. But you know, a lot of artists, we know about them because they did break the rules. So, you know, even when you're breaking the rules and you're purposely doing something, it's still affecting everything else. So you have to know that basic rule. It's like I kind of think of it as like a symphony, like in music, and everything just like it's, you know, it all works together, right? And the third point is that what I was just saying about a color field. So at the end, you know, towards the end of this video, I am going to show you a few more examples about what I mean. But, you know, if something is, say, this black hair over here, well, it's going to have a lot of different colors and textures and tones. And knowing this one thing alone and incorporating that into your art is absolutely going to change your art. It's going to elevate it. Not that there's anything wrong with having a flat color field. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that either. And I've seen lots of art that just has a flat color field. But if you want to, you know, paint more what I would call painterly, and not like a poster, there's a poster style of working, and that is a very popular and valid way of working. It's actually an art style, and there's absolutely, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. There are a lot of people who love painting poster style of art, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, if you want to have a more painterly kind of approach, then you are going to elevate your art by knowing this one thing, which is that in any color field, it's not going to be a solid field of color. It is going to be a whole bunch of different colors. So I will be quiet about that for now, because maybe I'm just going on about it too much. So all I'm doing is I'm just building up my face here, and I don't want to get too many colors involved in the process. So let me just say that if you strengthen your knowledge of values, which is the reason, a main reason why I am doing my 100-day project in this way, which is I'm trying not to incorporate a lot of colors. Like this pink over here, which I absolutely love, by the way, I'm gonna neutralize it. But the reason why I am working in this way is because I want to strengthen my knowledge of values. So if you strengthen that, if you get really strong with learning how to work with values, you can pretty much use any color you want, because it's not the colors that determine something like a form. It is the values. And you know, another great exercise to do is to excuse me, another great exercise to do is to just use, you can either use like a Payne's gray or a really dark like a ultramarine blue, a really dark blue. And what you can do is just use the paint and water it down. That's it. Just use one color and white paper. And you can really strengthen your values that way, because you're going to use the water as like your white. I hope I'm making sense. So just say I'm going to be using this blue over here. It's a really rich dark blue. Well, if I use it full strength, it is going to, you know, be like my darkest value, right? But if I water it, like really, really water it, I'm still gonna have a blue, but it's gonna be such a light blue that it's gonna be in this value over here. And then I can use the water to make varying strengths of values. I might not be able to get all of these values, but I can get most of them. And if you just work in one color, and I would recommend like a really dark blue or a Payne's gray, and water, just don't even use white, just use your water to water it down, you will really strengthen your values. And that's really what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just kind of get better at my values. And that's one of my main objectives. And that's why I'm not using all my like really bright colors. So I am going to leave the yellow for like say the bridge of the nose, and I'm gonna model the nose using the yellow that I put down on the paper. So I'm gonna kind of like to just make it a little bit more simple for me, I am going to pretend that the yellow is the white of the paper. So like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of go like so. And I'm just gonna kind of build up the lips here. And if you guys do the splash of paint in the beginning, like the way I did with the yellow or the blue, you might find that you have a preference for like either the lighter color or you might have a preference for the darker color. And that is going to inform you about your visual language. And, you know, I made another video, I don't know, it might have been a few weeks ago, about, you know, how do you believe in your art, and, you know, how do you, like, how do you become the biggest advocate for your art? And one of the things is to understand your visual language and to kind of become obsessed a little bit about your visual language. Like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? You know, why are you drawn to this? And to really kind of like examine it. And not from a place of judgment, like right or wrong. Like maybe you just like it. Like it doesn't have to be like a right or wrong thing. But just become really curious and then kind of like a little bit obsessed about why you like the things you like. And that all goes into like, you know, understanding your visual language and becoming the biggest advocate for your art, because only you can understand your art. Like, I mean, sure, you can explain it, but that's what art critics do. You know, they kind of, they're just like guessing, honestly, because just say there's an artist that existed like, you know, I don't know, 400, 500 years ago. Well, you know, they may not have written letters or, you know, they may not have like shared a lot of stuff about their art. So then you get an art critic who comes by like 500 years later and they're just like, oh, la 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 la. And, you know, there were people who would actually interview Georgia O'Keeffe and argue with her when she was alive, like actually argue with her about what her art was really about. Like, I just can't, I still can't get over that. But So yeah, like only you can understand your art. And just because somebody is an art critic or whatever, it doesn't not mean that they can understand your art better than you. Like nobody can understand your art like you can. So just become really curious about, why you like the things you like. And so see, now I am kind of doing this kind of like mushy kind of background, but I do want some of the yellow to show through because I'm really kind of digging it actually. So I'm just going to play around here, but I'm going to let a lot of this show through. And I try to wait for the mushiness like of the background for the last. Like I work on the face and then I work on the background because I know that once I put all of this watery stuff down, I'm gonna have to kind of let it dry because it's just it does get kind of puddly. But anyways, what I was saying was, just become curious about your art and about your visual language and really understand it, because you are the biggest advocate, and like nobody else is going to understand your art like you are. They're just not. And sure, you can explain it to them. And art isn't something that's always explained. Like you feel it in your heart and your soul. And either people resonate with it or they don't. But, I just find that when you really kind of become obsessed with your art, like, why do I do that? And it strengthens your visual language. Okay. So I'm gonna just bring it closer, but I'm gonna try not to like move it like too much because I don't want it to like I don't want it to spill. And you can see a lot of the yellow, but I'm thinking we're still in the early stages. But, I'm really loving the way like the skin is like building up over here. I'm really loving all that. Now I have got to model the nose. I've got to, bring in some other tones and colors. Like I'm thinking maybe even some grays and blues into the shadowy areas. But I'm just going to move this off to the side, and then I'm going to show you a few things like I was trying to tell you about. This is another great book. I've got a lot of books, you guys. I am a bookworm, but I just, I've collected books over the years, and this is a great book. It's called 60 Minutes to Better Painting, and it is Sharpen Your Skills in Oils and Acrylics. So I just want to show you, like I'm going to bring this up close here, and I hope the camera can pick up on that. So that is, these are two different like subjects. This is a still life and this is a person. So I'm going to talk about the still life first. So this is reading as silver, a silver pot, like a teapot or something. And these are two lemons, okay? But look at the silver. Like look at how many colors are in the silver. And look at how many colors are in the lemon. This lemon and this lemon, the two lemons. There's like, there's like shadow and there's brush strokes and there's the way the light hits. So there's tons and tons and tons of colors. Like this is not one color. There's blues and like a little bit of brown and black. And I mean, there's just so much stuff going on here. But when I look at that, I read that as a silver teapot and I read that as lemons. And it's the same with this person over here. This is a Caucasian man and he's got his back turned towards us, but look at the skin. Like look at all the colors in the skin. But you still read it as, okay, that's, a Caucasian man. But look at all the different colors. Now it's the same with anything. Like look at the water over here. There's a million different colors in the water, right? And same here, okay? Now I look at this and I go, I know this is a white piece of fabric, but there are so many different colors and tones and textures. Same with the face, same with, I read this as red, but all of this, I would say about 75% of this is actually that's reading to me as like a brownish, it's a brownish color with some blues in it, some grays in it. So, you know, even over here, like look at the skin. There are so many different tones in there, colors, textures, brush strokes. But when you look at that, you are reading it as like, I'm looking at that, and that to me reads as a Caucasian woman. You know, this to me, I think this is a black man, but you know, I can largely tell that by his facial features and his hair, but in his skin tone, and this is a good opportunity for me to, because I've mentioned this before, like even though he is a black man and this is a white woman, there are a lot of the similar tones and colors, etc. Because even in really light skin, you're still gonna have dark tones, different colors, dark colors, light colors, and the same with, you know, dark skin. So, but I just want to point this out too. So this here is what I would call poster art, and you know, this is a style of painting. I think it became popular like in the 1920s and 30s, maybe. I could be wrong on that, but you know, and then it carried through, and this is like a very flat style of painting, and there's nothing wrong with either this one or this one. They're just two different styles of painting. But if you do want to have a more painterly style, if you just keep in mind that, okay, just because this is white, you are going to still be using a ton of colors, a ton of tones, a ton of textures. So I will leave that over there and not be like a, you know, just like say the same thing over and over again like a broken record. But if you've watched all the way to the end, thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.